Hi, my name is Frank Zavala, and this is my culture and language story. Today I will be interviewing Heaven Edwards. Can you introduce yourself to everyone?
Sure. My name is Heaven, and I'm from Mineral Wells, Texas. I studied political science and business at UC San Diego, and I've also been privileged to work with farmers in both Ghana and in Thailand. And one day I hope to work with sustainable business modeling.
That's awesome. So can you tell us a little bit about how you grew up, where you grew up, and some of your culture and language?
Sure, I'd love to. So, like I mentioned, I was born in Mineral Wells, Texas, and I moved to Sacramento at the age of 10. And I really loved growing up in Texas with the open fields and the freedom of a small, safe town. In fact, when I was a kid, my brother and I, we would just ride our bikes around during the day in the summer, and my dad just told us to be home by dark, which was really nice. And also, Southern hospitality is a huge part of my family. As soon as you get to anybody's house, you're just bombarded with food and, of course, the sweetest tea. And also, just as iconic as our hospitality is our Southern accent, which is infamous for the drawl.
That's awesome. Okay, so how do you think that your language and culture and being from Texas affected you once you moved to California?
Oh my goodness. So like I mentioned, I was 10 when I moved to California. No. And that year was 2003. And I don't know if you remember, but that was the year that the SpongeBob episode came out. And in this episode, they make fun of Texans. Sandy is the squirrel in SpongeBob, and she's from Texas. Yeah. Mm-hmm. And they make fun of her, and they say, "Can we call shoes from Texas dumb?" And of course, that had to be the same year that I moved from Texas. So I got made fun of a lot for that, and I had a really thick accent when I first moved. And of course, that's also that was when I was in 4th grade, and that's the same year that you have to study poetry in school. So I had to, get up and speak my poetry out loud in front of a classroom of students, and they'd all make fun of me, and we'd go to the playground afterwards, and they'd all make fun of me. But, when I look back, I'm grateful for my culture, and even though I had to go through that, it's still nice. And I do miss my drawl a little bit. If I could go back, I'd have my drawl back.
Well, I'm sorry that had to happen to you.
Okay.
So how did it make you feel to, get this pressure from the kids or whatnot because of your Southern drawl?
Yeah, sure. I think it impacted my education a little bit because I was self-conscious to stand up and share my poetry out loud. And I do remember going to my teacher and being like, hey, after I say a poem, I get a lot of smack on the playground. Like, maybe I shouldn't have to say my poetry out loud, and she wasn't having any of that. And I'm grateful for that because it makes you a better person to stand up for yourself, and to get in front of a crowd of people is always good.
Yeah, I'm sure that helped you build with your education and your strengths along the way. One other question. So being that you left Texas so young, how do you feel connected to your culture now, and how does that build on your education and who you are today?
Sure. So it wasn't until I was about 18 or 19 did I realize that I actually wasn't just a cultureless white woman like I thought I was. But actually I have a colorful culture with many Southern traditions, like playing horseshoes and shooting guns. Very Southern.
It definitely counts. It's definitely a culture.
Sure.
Something to be proud of.
Thanks.
All right. So one final thing. What advice would you give to future teachers in order for them to provide, equal opportunity for education to everyone, no matter what background they come from?
Sure. So I would ask that maybe teachers act as an advocate for students who have potential but who lack that support from home. I remember being tested for gifted and talented education when I was in 3rd grade in Texas. Yeah. Then I moved to California for 4th grade, and so they didn't know that I had already passed this test and that I could, then be put into advanced classes in California. Yeah. But luckily, my dad was really adamant about getting me placed in these classes, and he was really an advocate for me. But I worry about students who maybe their parents don't speak English, or their parents are very busy, or there's low-income families have a lot harder time with things like this. So I would hope that teachers could have a lookout for those students who have a lot of potential, but maybe they need an advocate.
That's awesome. I think that's great advice. So I'd like to thank you for doing this interview and sharing your cultural and linguistic story with us. Sure. And that's it. Thanks, guys.